where we hear from authors shaping management thinking today. My name is Jyoti Guptara, and I'm the author of Business Storytelling from Hype to Hack. How can AI be designed to enhance human decision-making instead of making all the decisions for us? This is just one of many tricky questions that Mann addresses in his new book, Artificial Integrity. Mann is Group Vice President at Thales, a global leader in aerospace, cybersecurity, and defense. His achievements in transformation have been featured as a case study by none other than IMD Business School, and I was very intrigued by the premise of your book, Mann. Thank you so much for being on the show with us.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.
Now, as the title of your book suggests, there's a difference between ethics or an ethical use of AI and having AI itself be ethical, or what you call having integrity. And it seems at first look to be almost a contradiction in terms. So would you please help us understand this term?
Yes. So I think that when it comes to ethics, right, most of the efforts that we can make and that we make so far, right, making sure that the AI systems will be, let's say, in the form of a guide rules when it comes to the ethical perspective, right? Most of those, let's say, practices and guidelines comes from external points from the algorithm perspective, right? Which is about guidelines, which is about policy, which is about committees, ethics people that, they meet, etc., and trying to figure out what is it that we want to, let's say, frame as a kind of a guidelines to have, let's say, AI systems making, let's say, the right courses in terms of the action and that we make so far, right? Making sure that the AI systems will be, let's say, in the form of a guide rules when it comes to the ethical perspective, right? Most of those, let's say, practices and guidelines comes from external points from the algorithm perspective, right? Which is about guidelines, which is about policy, which is about committees, ethics people that, they meet, etc., and trying to figure out what is it that we want to, let's say, frame as a kind of a guidelines to have, let's say, AI systems making, let's say, the right courses in terms of the action that is expected, etc. So all of these are mainly external to the algorithm, okay? When I think about integrity, I really, let's say, foresee as a kind of a next step in terms of the development of AI design, the ideas of ingraining some of those guidelines directly as part of the functioning of the system itself. So not being something that is external to the systems, but very much part of the core functioning of the systems. And so that's one, which is very much about giving the opportunity or the ability to the systems to not only be able to, let's say, exhibit raw intelligence, but very much be able of, let's say, delivering integrity-led outcome and integrity-led functioning. So it means, in a way, mimicking a form of ethical intelligence, right? But also a form of a moral intelligence, because there is many things that we can think about before it happens, and so we can frame the, let's say, guidelines and rules that goes with it. But of course, there is so many situations and circumstances from which this is hard to think in terms of what will be at that point, or for such things, the right guidelines, the right rules, the right, let's say, things to apply, right? So this is where, let's say, the moral judgments come into play, right? Where the rules of the game are, let's say, blurry, gray, not defined, not explicit. What am I going to take as a decision? So ethically, let's say, speaking, those AI systems, especially those that rely on some kind of a very complex, let's say, techniques such as deep learning neural networks, there needs to be, let's say, addressing a form of ethical intelligence by design, but also a kind of a moral intelligence by design when they, let's say, be facing some situation where the rules of the game is not, let's say, that complete to determine what is it going to be the right way to do. And last but not least, to be also able to exhibit and mimic a form of social intelligence, because at the end of the day, those systems and application really really have spread all around societies, used by many of us, right? In the end of many people. And so there is an interaction to think about in terms of human-to-machine perspective.
Thank you for defining the term for us, artificial integrity. Human beings have a conscience, and perhaps that's somehow connected to the consciousness. Is it possible technologically that soon or someday we might have AI mimic that very essentially human part of ourselves?
So let's say, cautious about this. There is many characteristics, many traits, right, that are so deeply human, right? Like understanding, like, be having conscious, right? Or imaginations also as well. I mean, there is so much characteristic that is so, let's say, grounded in what makes us different from any form of, let's say, machine, right?
So artificial integrity could work even without AI getting to that point.
Absolutely. It means that, let's put it this way. This is a kind of, let's say, approach where from kind of some perspective and in some form of an aspect, we may reach a point where the machine, algorithmically speaking, is able to have some mimic, right? Have some things that look similar, but are not, right? Mm-hmm. In terms of what will be expected as far as the gauge rules is concerned, as part of the core functioning of the system itself, right? So this is not something that will compete with our very own characteristic in doing so.
Oh, good.
Of course. And actually, this is not going, it should not be the kind of, let's say, path to look at, right? Because, at the end of the day, if we want to have those systems empowering people, augmenting people, it has to be, let's say, think in terms of what is it that we are going to, let's say, put in place and design to very much enhance our very own intelligence, enhance it, right? So it means that we need to understand what is it that, let's say, make our intelligence, right? Beyond, let's say, some kind of a cognitive ability related to reasoning, related to, let's say, calculation. There is more, let's say, a kind of a broad range of other particularities that make us intelligent. So we need to understand all that spectrum and trying to figuring out the point that, okay, if the machine exhibits some part of that intelligence, what is the level of, let's say, ethical intelligence, moral intelligence, and social intelligence we really have to work on to code it, right? So of course, this is going to be different from, let's say, what we exhibit and what we, let's say, show each and every day. But how is it that we are going to, let's say, imagine a way to code it, a way to create mechanisms that, let's say, allow the algorithms, allow, let's say, the different phases of training that the, let's say, AI learn from. So it will be able, of course, not to be in comparison to what we do and what we are able to do when we are at our best, of course, but at least to have that in, let's say, its very own functioning when, let's say, some kind of a decision or at least preconization has to be made by the machine.
Hamilton, you're thinking far into the future, which is very important for us to do now. And of course, your book lays out potential scenarios and roadmaps and ways that humans and AI systems can collaborate or even compete in a healthy way, and even how we can transition from one model to the other, which I found especially interesting. And yet, for many of our viewers, certainly given my own conversations with corporations or individual executives, top of mind is use cases, return on investment of their existing AI programs. So why should somebody in the coming weeks and months pick up artificial integrity when they're already struggling to demonstrate a clear ROI?
Yeah, I mean, that's the key questions, right? Which is about, okay, how do we adopt already what we have and what we, let's say, see out there, right? To make an edge with that, right? So, two things. First, it makes me think about, the famous quote from Warren Buffett, right? Was saying that when looking for people to hire, you want to look in three qualities, right? First, integrity. Second, intelligence. Third, energy. But if they don't have the first, the other two may kill you.
Yeah, you don't want people without integrity, but with intelligence and energy working against your purpose. Absolutely.
All right? The same that we consider as obvious for the great talent that we want to hire as part of our organization to thrive, the same applies to the AI systems on which we want to pretend inject intelligence.
That's a brilliant response, Hamilton. I've never heard it put so succinctly before, so thank you for that. So let's talk about then the roadmap to pioneering artificial integrity. Business leaders typically are very happy to delegate to the technologists, anything to do basically with AI or technology. This time obviously has to be different because we need different people at the table. We need strategists, we need ethicists, etc. Is that a realistic expectation, or what advice can you give us for bringing these very different people together?
I mean, this is something to see more than a kind of a, let's say, need. This is an obligation. This is very much an obligation. I mean, if you find yourself to be in the business of, let's say, trying to, let's say, figuring out how to build AI systems that will, let's say, make a kind of a good difference in societies, right? Thinking about your customers, the ecosystem of your customers, and society in a way, right? You have to, this is not you need, you have to conceptualize, think about the design of the systems in a kind of an interdisciplinary way. Why? Because there is so much dimension to take care of when it comes to the implication of any form of intelligent object in societies, right? So he wants to triangulate all those questions, all those different dimensions, to make sure that, at least from your responsibility perspective, you have been thinking about a bunch of scenarios. The best case, hopefully it happens very often, but also the worst case scenario.
Who is responsible for ensuring that in the future we have, hopefully one day, artificial integrity? Because, if no one person or one group is responsible, nobody will take responsibility.
I will give you, let's say, one maybe example, right, on that part of the responsibility. I mean, what we are living is not new. We have been, let's say, shaping in societies with technologies for a long time ago now, right? I will take the example of the car. The car has been such kind of a huge revolution worldwide, right? It has changed many things in our life, our habits, our way to experience the world. Car is, let's say, no more than 1.19 million people dying per year because of accident related to car, okay? 1.19 million people per year. So what I mean by that, you do the math, is roughly something around 23 people dying per week, right, in average. It means that technology doesn't come for free, all right? Technology doesn't come for free. It is not a kind of a black and white, scenario or thinking, a kind of a, let's say, polarized discussion that makes sense. We need to find, let's say, balance, let's say, a kind of a, let's say, consideration where all the pieces and parts, when it comes to the implication, are well treated, well thought in advance. Because the technology doesn't come for free, no. And last but not least, it means that facing the opportunities that AI can bring to societies, because there is a lot of benefits, right, for societies, just thinking about science and all those kind of a disease like cancer that we can, let's say, find solutions, etc. So thinking about all those benefits, the idea is very much about, okay, how do we care about the potential harmful effects of AI, whether those harmful effects come from bad intention or, let's say, unintentional, let's say, behaviors? How do we make sure for that not worsening the difficulties that we already see in societies, so we can, let's say, make sure that the equations goes way beyond the expectation from the benefits, perspective?
Hamilton Mann, thank you for helping us to understand a little better a very deep and complex but very important topic. And thank you for your book, Artificial Integrity. Ladies and gentlemen, you've been listening to Hamilton Mann of Thales. I'm Jyoti Guptara. And next up, after a highlight reel, we will be hearing from Julia Kirby, our programming director at the Drucker Forum, in conversation with Brian Solis.